Hi, BookTube. Welcome to Jackie's Literary Corner. I am Jackie, and I thought I would talk about something that I rarely talk about. Well, it's not, the topic itself is not necessarily something I rarely talk about, but it kind of is and kind of isn't. I am really bad at these introductions. I always want to, but I'm too lazy to redo it, and I don't know how to edit, and I still do not know how to edit, and I need someone to help me learn how to edit. I need someone to go over the editing with me. I need the programs, and unfortunately, my parents aren't really knowledgeable of that stuff. So. But anyway, well, basically, as you can see by these two right up here, we're going to talk about two of the most famous authors in literature, and that are considered classics, and that is Shakespeare and Austen. And I've had complicated feelings about these two. Because, my first thought is, oh, I don't like them. They're so hard to read. But then, as I've gotten older and read more classics, and now that I'm not a student anymore and just kind of reading for fun, and I've watched a lot of booktubers that love classics and will talk about them constantly, like Katie from Books and Things, Jen from Insert Literary Pun, Kate Howe. There are so many. Some of my favorite, a lot of my favorite booktubers will talk about classics. In fact, I just watched Emily Fox doing a video where she was going to read some French classics in French. That's her first language. And she has been reading The Count of Monte Cristo. And her, along with Jennifer Brooks, have read The Count of Monte Cristo. And you guys know I have read, I just have not finished it. And it's such a big chunk of a book. But so I've attempted these several times, and of course, I think everybody in school has read at least one Shakespeare play. And I actually, while watching, because I have a lot of my favorite actors are British, and I was watching some interviews with some of those actors last night, which is what I've been doing all this month, actually, because there's a few of them in the Avengers movies. And I was just thinking, I wonder if they study Shakespeare more in their school than we do, because that's where Shakespeare is from. Shakespeare is British. It's Shakespeare's home country. So I'm wondering if they read more of the plays than we do, because here in America, because I've only read a handful of Shakespeare's plays. I read in my freshman year of high school. I read Romeo and Juliet, and I'm wondering if they have you read that your freshman year, because the main plot is about two teenagers falling in love. So a lot of us at that age, apparently I can't because I never dated anyone, can relate to that. Really high, strong emotions and falling in love for the first time, and especially when you're really young. So it's very, and having controlling parents, or parents that are trying to force, these expectations on you. I think, I'm wondering if they assume that at that age, because a lot of teenagers can relate to that. So it's like the perfect play to start reading in high school. And then in my sophomore year, we read Julius Caesar by Shakespeare, and I just, I think it was because of how my sophomore English teacher taught. It made it so engaging and so interesting. The only problem is that, in school, it's like a lot of people when we're reading, even when we're reading as a class, and it does make it more interesting. I don't think most people, at least in American schools, that's the impression I get, that they don't really care. That they're just doing it because they have to. Because they just, I remember them just reading the lines. I think only maybe a few people actually got into and read the lines the way you should read them, with the right emotions and stuff. And granted, they just might not have understood it, comprehended it anyway. Because let's face it, unless you have studied Shakespeare your whole, and really pay attention. I think it's for some. I part of my problem was I don't always know what I don't always understand it. I can't comprehend it. I mean, as the more although I surprised myself when I read Hamlet when I took that British literature class a couple years ago at the community college here in the county I live at now, and I actually think I got what. I mean, granted, maybe it's because you hear, even if you've never read the play, you're gonna hear about Shakespeare plays. You're gonna hear about them constantly, and the plots are gonna be familiar. So I think I think it helped that I kind of knew some idea of what the story was about, what Hamlet was about, but I kind of got what I kind of figured out was going on. I understood some of the dialogue, not all of it, and so and that was the one that when I took that class, that was the one I was most excited to read. But then we didn't start with Hamlet. We started with first Beowulf, which was pretty good. I didn't hate it. I didn't love it, but I didn't hate it. And then we read Sir Gawain and the Green Knight, and then we spent so much time on Canterbury Tales reading every single story, which, by the way, I would not, I would not recommend unless you're a teacher that doesn't care, unless your teacher just doesn't care as much. Do not skip any of those stories because, like, here's a lesson, kids: don't skip. Don't skip a class. Don't skip some of the reading because teachers might just surprise you and it might bite you in the butt later. And you might have to, because I skipped one of the stories, I totally forgot to read one of them, and we had a surprise quiz the next day. And the one. Okay. Alright. So that was a big no-no. I totally failed on that one. But I think I still managed an A in that class. But, yeah, I have a grudge against Canterbury Tales now because it's like we spent so much time reading every single story that by the time we got to Hamlet, it was like the last week of the semester. And so we were just given the assigned reading and the teacher told us, okay, your final test will be on Hamlet. And we didn't even discuss it. And then we did attempt to watch the movie, but my peers would not shut up. The people sitting behind me wouldn't shut up. They kept snickering. And you know how when you're if you give someone a dirty look and you want to be like, will you shut up? I actually care about this. They're just going to laugh at you. They're not going to take you seriously. They're just going to mock you and troll you about it and everything. And it's like, so there was no point in looking back there. It's not going to do anything if you just give someone the stink eye. And, but I was very tempted to, do that. So all I ended up doing was I was kind of rolling my eyes. I was trying to pay attention to the movie. I actually cared about Hamlet. I wanted to watch the movie and I wanted to understand the play. And only maybe a few people in that class actually cared enough and was interested in it. I mean, and maybe if we had had more time, then maybe I would be proven wrong. But at the moment, I highly doubt it. But I was so annoyed by that. Now, what I would like to do now is I put on on Thrift Books, you can do a wish list. So I put on my wish list a library binding edition of the Shakespeare tragedies, which include Hamlet, the Scottish play, which I don't know how that superstition works. If you're just I'm sitting here just talking to you guys in front of the camera. I'm at my house. I'm not in a theater or anything. So I wonder, can I say the name of the Scottish play? I don't know if that's jinxing it or if that's if that's just but anyway, and then as King Lear and Othello. So and then I would like to get some of the. Second, guys. Yeah. So anyway. So, but yeah, I put on and I almost want to get it now, but I'm trying to wait because, I don't want to make an order now just after I made an order last month. at the beginning of last month. And also, you know, because I'm like not working at the moment, maybe I figure it would probably be that. And if I wait until I start working again, which is not until next week, because this would have been the week I would go to the Terry would come to visit and we would go to the convention, but that got canceled because of, you know, what's going on in the world right now. So yeah, at the moment I'm not working, but next week, starting next Monday, I think I'm back on the schedule again. So I might wait at least until then. Before, but I'm very tempted to, you know, be like, Mom, I'm gonna order that Shakespeare collection, because unfortunately this one is hard to read, and it's as you can see, it's a big hardback book, and it's hard to travel with, and I want to be able to take things with me. I want to take my books with me, my physical books, and no, I'm not gonna do. Yes, I have a Nook, the Barnes & Noble e-reader, but no, I don't like using it. You know, I only have a few books in there. And then I just got like, okay, I don't really care about this, and I just want to read a physical book. So, you know, now I have no problem with audiobooks. I've definitely gotten to audiobooks. What's bringing me to Jane Austen? Like, I think listening to an audiobook version of a Jane Austen novel makes it a little bit easier. Because even though it's not like, her words are a little better to comprehend, I think, than Shakespeare. Because Shakespeare's essentially poetry, and hers is prose. But at the same time, there are some words, and she says a lot of words. Like, there's a lot, like, authors like Dickens and Austen have said so many things, so many words to just get to this. And, you know, if you're not used to it, you're probably maybe I'm wrong here, but I feel like a lot of people, if you're not used to that writing style, you're thinking, okay, get to the point. Like what the heck are you saying? Are you saying this person is sad? Are you saying this person just cheated on this person? Or, you know, or this person is broke money-wise and needs to find a husband? Like, it's like, you know, is the, like, now, I mean, of course, I could be wrong here, because I haven't really talked to anyone about this. But I gotta admit, that was probably my thoughts at first, when I first started reading reading Jane Austen, which Pride and Prejudice, I was just going to say, that was actually my first Austen I ever read. And I personally recommend, like, I know this is blasphemous and sinful, but I think seeing the adaptation first of a Jane Austen novel could potentially help if you're new to her writing style. Just watch the movie, because then once you have seen the movie adaptation, or the miniseries adaptation, then you'll understand what's going on. You'll have a better understanding. Oh, good, the sun's out. You'll have a better understanding of what's going on in the scene, because you'll have a visual. So when you're reading it, then you will know what is going on in the scene, and what the message of the scene, the theme of those scenes, the themes of the book are. But what I would like to do is like, I know a lot of people there's been a few people that I've seen, especially this month, because it's Jane Austen July, which will be ending soon, in 24 hours, actually. Because I think there's only 30 days in July, I think. And, you know, they were ranking their Jane Austen works. I still don't know, because I haven't read all of her books. So I couldn't do it for Jane Austen July, but I would love to rank her novels, because I've read Persuasion, Sense and Sensibility. I want to reread Pride and Prejudice again, but I have read Pride and Prejudice. And I just finished listening to Emma, an audiobook, and then Mansfield Park. So I just need to read Lady Susan, which is not an actual novel. It's but it's a epistolary novel. And then I gotta read, Northanger Abbey, and then that's it. And then I think I've read all of her works. Not unless you count like her letters and stuff like that, and essays and stuff like that. And then there's also, you know, those Jane Austen, non-Jane Austen works that have to do with Austen, but they're not her, like the ones that are kind of retellings, like the other Bennet sisters I would like to read. I've only read Longbourn, and now I want to read the other Bennet sister. That's one of the ones that Katie from Books and Things has talked about, and how she really enjoyed that one. which, by the way, I definitely, if you're an Austen fan, if you haven't discovered Katie from Books and Things, I definitely recommend checking her out because she does a lot of really good, insightful Austen videos. Like I just saw her video where she talked about Mr. Collins and all the interpretations of his character and what he represents in the story of Pride and Prejudice. It was very interesting because, and I think my thoughts on Mr. Collins are similar to hers, where, like, I understand, I think he is a bit a naive character and just a young man, because in the novel he's only 25, but she also talked about in a lot of adaptations he's either in his early 30s or late 30s into his 40s. That's how he's cast, because he's a very sensible, serious man. So so people assume that he's not. So I guess that's why, I guess people assume that he's not as young as the book implies, or that people would think that he's not as young as the book says he is. He's only 25. And I think, again, and I agree with Katie that because he's just a naive guy, he's kind of, you get frustrated with him and annoyed by him, but at the same time, he's just he doesn't understand, and he doesn't get that his personality kind of can rub people the wrong way, and he's not very good at really understanding social mores and stuff like that. And he thinks very highly of himself. But to be fair, he doesn't understand, as she talked about, that he probably doesn't understand his position in society yet. He doesn't really, because he knows these very well-to-do people that are very popular in society, like Lady de Burgh, but he doesn't have a lot of money. He's not as wealthy as some people. But he's also going to inherit the Bennet family estate because, Mr. and Mrs. Bennet have $5. They don't have any sons. And he's the male heir to the family. Which reminds me of Downton Abbey, where there were 3 daughters. Their family did not have any sons. So the oldest has to marry a distant cousin. Mr. Collins does that. He proposes to Elizabeth. Well, first he says to stay on Jane, but then he realizes they're trying to get her with Mr. Bingley. So he sets his sight on Elizabeth, thinking it's the most sensible and practical, and he thinks she's pretty and all that. And, like, Katie talks about this stuff. And so unfortunately the proposal was really bad. It was like the worst proposal ever. I don't know what's worse, this proposal or Darcy saying to Elizabeth when he first proposes to her that I love you against my will, essentially. I don't know which one is worse. But yeah, I'm definitely starting to like Shakespeare. Not Shakespeare, Jane Austen a lot more. And I appreciate her work. She's not my go-to author. She's not my number one, but definitely enough that I want to read her work. I want to read all of her work, or as much as it if I can, because there are other, writings by her as well that exist in the world that you can get access to. I don't know how, but you can. And I wouldn't mind, like, if I ever went to England and, I believe there's a museum type of their family home and all that. So I would love to go there and check that out and get a suit, and do a tour and all that kind of stuff. But I want to rank, as I started saying earlier, I want to rank them and see which ones, but I still, I don't know how I would rank them, because my feelings are all over the place. Like, I feel like I can relate to Fanny Price, because I was a very shy, reserved person. The good news is I don't have a family situation like hers. And I love the romance of Darcy and Elizabeth. Who doesn't? Most people do. But I really like how Emma is a very different kind of heroine, and she's so interesting to read about, so entertaining. It just makes me smile, and her assumptions about people and thinking and her arrogance is very like interesting to read about, which is funny because when a guy's arrogant, it's like seen as charming and adorable, and you kind of roll your eyes. It's like, oh, but when a woman is like that, I feel like sometimes women get more criticism if a woman is arrogant and confident and thinks she knows everything. Like women get criticized for that. Like people find Emma really annoying. Not that, no, of course, I'm not, no, not that I'm saying that, oh, women aren't annoyed by men being arrogant. I mean, I am, obviously. I find there's a limit to the arrogance I can take. But in real life, I would not want to date a guy that's arrogant. You know, like, I would not want to date, like, let's say Sherlock Holmes, for instance. I couldn't handle that. He just annoyed the crap out of me. But it's more entertaining when it's like you view it from a distance. When it's like in a story or in a movie, then it's cool. But women, I feel like women get a little more criticism than men do when it comes to being arrogant and confident, thinking you're superior to everybody else. So, but Emma it was such a fun story to listen to, because if I say I read it, then people get mad and be like, no, you didn't. Not technically, you didn't read it. You listened to it, so that doesn't count. But anyway, so I don't know how I'm gonna, and I want to read all the ones I have, and I'm trying to read all the ones that are in here, basically. So I just have Northanger Abbey, and then Lady Susan's in here, and then but nothing. I don't know about any of the other stuff, because I know, like I said, there's other published works by her out there in the world. So back to Shakespeare. So I want to get that one collection, that library binding for the thrift books. The only reason why I kind of am tempted to be like, Mom, can I just buy this now? Is because, there are some editions that are temporarily unavailable on the thrift, on these sites. Like some of these really nicer editions, it says temporary, unavailable. And the same thing with the movie I want to get. Like, there's thrift books does have DVDs on there, but then it will say, temporary, unavailable. Like, I tried to get another particular, I wanted to buy Crimson Peak, mostly because of the man, but then it wasn't available. There was a book, though. Apparently, I don't know if the book came out first. I'm a little wary of books that come out after a movie, like, were adapted from a movie. I'm a little wary about them, because I was not, I liked the original Charmed books. They were fun, but then after a while, thinking about them now, it felt like they were more like fan fiction. No disrespect to the authors. I'm sure they worked really hard and did a really good job. I didn't like them. I would rather just watch the show. But, and that's just how I feel. I mean, I'm sure people loved the Charmed books. Just as people, I'm sure but I just was not. I'm wary about that when when a show or a movie is adapted into a book. Like, if the show or the movie comes out first and then someone decides, oh, I'm going to turn this into a book. But anyway, so I definitely want to read, I want to reread Hamlet, and then I want to get to some of the other works. Shakespeare's work is another one that I would definitely recommend seeing the adaptations, the on-screen adaptations first, because there's something about, like, watching someone perform the Shakespeare dialogue, perform the play, it's like, or hearing someone else read it that understands it it makes it so much more enriching, and it makes it easier to comprehend it when you get the visual of someone performing it, or you hear it from someone else who already knows it. Like, I definitely, when I see the adaptations, I definitely have a better understanding of what's going on. And then the same thing with, and unfortunately, you can't go to theater on a regular, the regular theater on a regular, you can't go to the theater, the stage, on a regular basis. Like, especially when you go to professional theater, then that's going to cost a lot of money. And then, there is a Shakespeare in the Park thing in our community, but it doesn't happen very often. And so, but it is free, which is nice. And I'm trying to think of which play it was. I don't know if it was, Midsummer Night's Dream, they did that. That's the one that they did, the last one I saw by the Shakespeare in the Park people. Which every time I say that, now I'm going to be thinking about that line. The doth mother know you weareth her drapes? That is one of my favorite Avengers lines. And it was perfect being said in front of, of Tony saying that to Iron Man. I mean, he is Iron Man. Saying that to Thor. Wow. And it was so funny and it was so priceless, But, and I always wanted, if I ever got to meet the cast and hang out with them, I would love for them to, I know they're not performing monkeys and stuff, but part of me would love to ask them, would you do some of your lines in Shakespeare format? Like, do it like a Shakespeare play? Like, some of the scenes? Like, how would you, like, some of the funny, like, the group conversation, I think it would be a funny improvisation type thing if they did some of their dialogue from the Avengers movies in like Shakespeare, like as if it was a Shakespeare play. I think that would be really funny. But chances of me meeting them in person, it's not gonna happen. I mean, maybe one day by some magic miracle or whatever. But I mean, I was telling Terry the other day that we should have gone to Wizard World in Philly in 2016 because actually Tom and Chris were at Wizard World in Philly that year. I think Thor: The Dark World came out then, or maybe Avengers or something, and they were there, and it was like, really? And because those opportunities are so rare. I mean, I don't know how I would react if I met those guys. Because I already get weird and stumble and get all starstruck when I meet someone like one of the doctors from Doctor Who, or like I met River Song. That's not her name, but the actress. I met her and I just stumbled on my words. I couldn't, like, I was just having trouble getting out what I wanted to say to her. But anyway, that's off topic. So anyway. So yeah, but I definitely want to start giving them another chance. And I used to have I had the Taming of the Shrew, a copy of the Taming of the Shrew, but then at the time I was like, forget this, I'm never gonna read Shakespeare. But now I kind of changed my mind, and I have this, but this one. But again, look at this. This is a hardback book. It's very hard to travel with and read, and I want to, and I want to bring with me when I go on trips and stuff. But when, like I said, I like a lot of British actors. I'm even more encouraged because, I watch a lot of British actors, and as I said earlier in the video, I kind of wonder if a lot of them, if in England, in British schools, do they study Shakespeare a lot more than we do in American schools? Is that part of their criteria or their curriculum? I'm curious because that's Shakespeare's hometown. But maybe I'm assuming things. I don't know, but it would, I would love to study more Shakespeare and try to be able to understand it better. I would love to take a Shakespeare class. And I know there's a British literature class too, level 2 or whatever it would be called. But I haven't got around to it yet. I have thought about it, but I haven't really brought it up yet. I keep making excuses, and now I have a job, so I'm like, I just want to focus on my job for right now. I don't want to take the class. So it's definitely one of those things where I'm just making excuses. But I would, I want to talk to someone. I would love to take a class and talk to someone that actually understands it and appreciates it. So, like I said, I watch a lot of British actors. I'm into a lot of British actors, and whenever they talk about Shakespeare, I feel so self-conscious and I feel so dumb. And it makes me even more inclined to want to get more into it, give it another chance. I'm into Tom Hiddleston right now. He's my crush at the moment, and he talks about Shakespeare. He's a huge Shakespeare nerd, and he loves it. And he has done he did Coriolanus. He's read. I'm confused if he's actually. I think he did Hamlet. I'm not sure. I think he played Hamlet, or he wants to play Hamlet, and he's just read the famous speech. I don't know. And let's see, what else has he done? And he's all, he talks about how when he's old enough, he loved to play King Lear. I think he's done Othello. He's done a lot of the tragedies, basically. And I would love to see him play Benedict. I think he would be a great Benedict. And it would be kind of nice to see him in a little less dramatic role, a role that was a little more comedic and fun, because he's a really funny guy, and I'd love to see him a character that's a little less damaged, because he plays a lot of characters that are very damaged and dysfunctional, which, that's a great, what actor doesn't want to do that, because it's such a juicy thing to get into, and it really looks at the human spirit. And so I think a lot of actors, that's if you can do that, if you can do this, oh my god, that's the best for an actor, if you can do those kind of really messed up characters, those damaged characters. And I think that's why a lot of times a lot of actors love playing the villain, because the villains are so messed up in the way, they always think they're right. And just hearing him talk about Shakespeare, it makes me even more inclined to get into it, and to check it, to try to get into it more and appreciate it more and understand it. Because I guess it's the same feeling I feel with all classics or bigger books. I feel like I'm missing out, and I want to try and keep proving that I can do it. And because I feel like I'm missing out on all this great material, this great story, because I'm so intimidated by it and so afraid that I won't be able to comprehend it, or that it's going to take up all my time trying to read it all. I still have not. I started Way of Kings last summer, I think it was. I started, and now I'm and it's such a long book. And the same thing with Count of Monte Cristo. Those are both such long books. I want to read them, and they're so good. And when I do start reading them, it's not that I can't understand them. Especially Way of Kings, because it's a 21st century novel, so it's not like a classic where the writing style is different. But I want to, but with Count of Monte Cristo, I cannot I can understand, I get what's going on. There are some things that I don't understand, but it's just more it's not necessarily, it's now when I read it, I'm thinking, well, it's not really about not being able to comprehend it, it's about that it's going to take a lot of time to read it. It's going to, so it's do I really want, and I am not someone, as much as passionate as I am about reading, I don't like sitting there for too long. Eventually I want to go up and I want to watch TV. Yes, I know, God forbid I want to watch TV or watch a movie, or, get lost in the black hole that is the internet. Or there are things that my family, eating dinner with my family, which is a little bit more of is a better excuse than wanting to watch TV or getting lost on the internet. So I like doing other stuff. And then I run for my exercise, to go for a run at on a daily basis. That's my form of exercise. So there's other stuff I do. And like I said, reading a big book is a big commitment. Now these two these are bind up, so of course they look big, but they're not that big. And plays are actually not really that hard. Shakespeare is just a different kind of writing, a different, very older English that sometimes, our modern minds can't always understand it or just don't get it. And you almost have to have a dictionary with you to read it. But I definitely want to give another shot and keep trying to get more into Shakespeare. So like I said, at some point I want to get that copy on thrift books, and read Hamlet again. And maybe I'll even talk to my parents about it if I have to. If that's my only person I can talk to about it. But I definitely want to, I want to get, like I said, I need a copy that I can easily travel with. That's not like this. And the same with I keep debating about buying some Austen novels, because it's I'm starting to like them more. or at least maybe buy, like, select some of them, not all of them, but just get a few of them, copies of a few of them, like in paperback, because there are some of them, because I really like Emma. I wouldn't mind having a copy of Emma. That would be kind of fun. And Mansfield Park, I wouldn't mind having, and of course Pride and Prejudice. Although my sister has a copy of Pride and Prejudice, and I don't know if she would, if that's. I mean, I don't want to, because I already steal some of their books anyway. But my sister doesn't read as much as I do, so it's like. But I mean, maybe one day I might be living with her anyway for a little while. So, and I don't know. Who knows what the future will hold for me, and with that, in the personal department of my life. So I'm wanting, so I might buy I might buy paperback copies of some of Austen's work, because I actually am starting to like her more and more. But I definitely want to get Shakespeare. I want to get some of Shakespeare. And I actually, because Tom did Coriolanus, now I think I want to read that one. I'm going to read that one at some point. And, and it's also very interesting because in the prequel Hunger Games book, Ballad of Songbirds and Snakes just came out, and people are saying that President Snow's first name is Coriolanus. So I'm wondering if Suzanne Collins was inspired by the historical figure, because I think he was a real guy. I wonder if she was inspired by that and decided to use that name. Like, maybe President Snow is his story is similar. I mean, I don't know, but because I don't know if I'm going to reread it. Like, if it's at the library when we can start going to the library again, I might get it from the library. But I don't know. I don't know if I want to spend the money or not, because I'm kind of moved on from Hunger Games. And then there are so many, like, a lot of rom-coms and a lot of, historical dramas and stuff are inspired by Shakespeare. Shakespeare has left an imprint on the literary medium, whether it's, a movie or a book or a TV show or a play, another, modern play. I think a lot of people, like, in that British literature class, when, she asked if anyone was familiar with Hamlet, and, I admitted that I was excited to read it, and then I had said that Lion King, I believe, was inspired by Hamlet, the first Lion King movie. Of course, the teacher had to, like, basically tell me, well, that has nothing to do with Hamlet. And I was like, well, he was inspired by Hamlet. It's the Hamlet story, but with lions, And even if that was, like, whether that was a silly thing to bring up or not, is like, yeah, thank you for embarrassing me. And, FYI, I'm probably one of the few people in this class that actually cares about Hamlet and wants to read the play and watch the movie. So, I mean, I wasn't going to be, like, immature about it and petty and say anything anyway. But in the back of my mind, I was thinking that kind of, and maybe I'm being a little dramatic and silly, but it definitely kind of hurt my feelings that she was like, well, that has nothing to do with Hamlet. It's like, well, The Lion King was inspired by Hamlet. So, it's, it's like, it just really kind of upset me. But anyway, yes, and then the sequel, The Lion King Simba's Pride, is inspired by Romeo and Juliet. So, and then, because Kenneth Branagh directed the first Thor movie, it had a very Shakespeare theme to it. Like, it was very, and in all these interviews with Tom Hiddleston and Kenneth Branagh, they talk about how he, was telling his main three guys that, like, that used Shakespeare and talking to them about Shakespeare plays, and how there's a lot of famous Shakespeare characters that they're the inspiration for the three main male leads of the story of Thor, like, Thor, Odin, and Loki. And because there's a lot of stories about fathers and sons, and they're all, and Thor and Loki are princes, and Odin's a king. So, and he, Tom was talking about how he basically talked to them all about those Shakespeare characters and how they could be an influence and inspiration for how they portray the three main the first Asgard family, the first family of Asgard, which I thought that was really cool. That was the inspiration for, because I mean, even though Shakespeare is really challenging to read for a lot, for at least for me, there's so much good stories. I'm especially determined to read Shakespeare and try to understand those plays, because it's not just about it is about family and romance and political intrigue and action and adventure. It has all that stuff in it in a play, and that makes me, I'm even more intrigued to get into that than Austen. I mean, I still want to read. I want to read all the rest of those last two Austen works, but Shakespeare, I definitely want to read more of. I mean, and like I said, I loved Hamlet. I thought that was such a good, interesting play. And I want to, and I would love to be able to have that famous, infamous, monologue by Hamlet, the to be or not to be speech. I want to have that memorized. I want to have a copy of it so I can memorize, because I'm not going to do anything in that book. In this one, I'm not going to highlight in that book. I mean, I have underlined in there, I think, in some of these, though. I have underlined. And and these two are the only ones that I want to buy separate copies. I mean, I bought separate copies of a lot of Dickens novels. I think every single one of them that I have in my Dickens bind up, in my Dickens omnibus, I think I have every single one of them in mass market paper, in paperback editions. So I want to do that with Shakespeare and possibly Austen. I don't know. But is there any classic author that you have wanted, that as you got older you've become more interested in, and maybe because of someone you have want to give a second chance? You didn't think, is there a classic author, an author, or not just classics, not just those older books, but any, is there any author that, particularly with authors that are older, like these two, that you just wanted to give, you didn't think you would be able to understand, but one day you decide, you were inspired to give them another chance, and maybe because your tastes have evolved and you've grown as a person, maybe you think you have a better shot at comprehending it. Or just with these two, are these two that are ones that you feel like you weren't sure if you could get into them, but now you either have gotten into them and definitely appreciate them more and enjoy them more, or you're like me where you want to, you just haven't yet. So if you guys like this video, be sure to give it a thumbs up, click subscribe if you haven't already, click the bell notification below to see when I post more videos. And I will talk to you all later. I hope you're all doing well and doing your part in helping with our current situation right now in the world, if there's anything you can do. And I will talk to you all later. Alright, bye!